What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. With the NFL draft right around the corner, just wanted to hop on and discuss the top 10 landing spots for these potential wide receivers. I did put out a video at the running back position. If you guys would like to check that out, it will be linked right up here. But before we get into it, if you guys could go down, give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. So you guys have any questions related to fantasy football, whether it be trades, dynasty, redraft, the upcoming NFL draft, anything, please ask away down below and subscribe to the channel. It is the best way to support me. It's totally free and you can always change your mind later. With that though, guys, let's kick it off with number 10, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. And well, yes, I know the Dallas Cowboys are kind of in a murky position. I mean, right now we're talking about a team that just brought in Brandon Cooks, a team that still has Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert still in this offense. I don't think that is stopping the Cowboys from drafting a legitimate number 2 wide receiver across from CeeDee Lamb. Well, Brandon Cooks is still a very talented wide receiver. He is getting kind of old. He will be 30 going into this upcoming NFL season. Not only that, he does have 9 seasons in the NFL, which is a lot of wear and tear on the body. Overall, I think the Cowboys are a good landing spot long term. In the short term, I would be a little bit concerned. That's why I do have them at 10. But if they do end up spending a first, second round draft pick on a wide receiver, I think that is somebody who will definitely end up being on my radar, simply because the Cowboys are such an elite offense, producing top 10 in total points year in and year out. So I really do like the Cowboys. Moving on though, I do have the Panthers, and well, yes, the Panthers do have a decently crowded wide receiver room at this current moment with Adam Thielen, with DJ Chark, with Terrace Marshall. I don't think any of these guys are legitimate threats. It's kind of the same thing with Brandon Cooks, where Adam Thielen's a very, very old wide receiver. DJ Chark, well, in my opinion, is promising, is pretty unproven outside of one season with Gardner Minshew. And not only that, they do have the 39th pick. They are going to have the number 1 overall pick in the draft, meaning they'll bring in the quarterback of their choice. Right now, the odds-on favorite is Bryce Young, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's Bryce Young. And Bryce Young probably does provide the highest day one floor to these wide receivers, simply because he is the most pro-ready prospect. I would say CJ Stroud somewhere in the middle, where he does have a bit higher upside, but is also pro-ready, whereas Anthony Richardson, not pro-ready at all, but definitely has the swing for the fences type upside that you like in a player. Whoever they end up going with, though, I will be fine with it, and I think it is a decent landing spot for wide receivers, especially with whoever they end up drafting at 1. Well, it could be a poor year for them this year. I think long-term, it is great having a number 1 pick at quarterback, and hopefully it ends up working out for them. Next up, this is a tier up, and I do have the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Vikings are a good landing spot for wide receivers. I know they have the Goliath that is Justin Jefferson. I know they do have TJ Hawkinson as well. But at the same time, I think this wide receiver 2 spot is completely vacant right now. I mean, you have KJ Osborne, who I personally do not think very highly of. He was 10th in total routes run, and despite that, did almost nothing with it. I think he had 650 yards. Not great from a guy who is operating as the wide receiver 3, going up against wide receiver 3 coverage and still not getting the ball a ton, despite, again, being 10th in the total amount of routes ran in all of the NFL last season. So I think the Vikings could end up drafting a wide receiver early. I mean, their season last season was very fluky. They do need help wherever they can get it. Their defense needs help. Their offense needs help. Depends on where they end up drafting a wide receiver, but I think it is a pretty good landing spot, especially considering Kirk Cousins has supported multiple great wide receivers in years past. Moving on, though, we have the Packers, and I think the Packers are another great landing spot. Well, Christian Watson, one of the best deep threats in the entire NFL. The Packers do hold the 15th pick, and if they want to get Jordan Love help, I think the best way to do that would be drafting a guy like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, would be drafting a guy like Quentin Johnston, would be drafting a guy like Jordan Addison. I think Jordan Addison and Jaxon Smith-Njigba fit what the Packers need a little bit more than Quentin Johnston, because they already have Christian Watson. But other than that, there really is nobody great in this offense. I think Romeo Doubs, well, a fun story, a cool prospect, not somebody I'm really too ecstatic about going into this next season, and I think getting a number 2 weapon for Jordan Love going into this next season is exactly what you need. They do still have a good running game. They have a great offensive line and a pretty good defense. So this is a team that will probably be able to compete this upcoming season if Jordan Love does end up being a pretty good quarterback. And what better way to do that, again, than bringing in a great wide receiver like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, like Jordan Addison in the middle of the first round. Next up, I have the Houston Texans, and I think the Houston Texans are a really good landing spot for a potential wide receiver. We're talking about a depth chart that consists of Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Noah Brown. Well, John Mechie, fingers crossed he's okay. I really hope he is. For his sake, it's a great story if he does end up coming back. I really hope he does. I hope he battles through this. It would be an awesome comeback. Should win NFL Comeback Player of the Year if he is able to play. But either way, This depth chart is absolutely desolate of a wide receiver one. Not only that, they hold the number 2 overall pick, which is likely to be CJ Stroud at this current moment. Draft boards could always flip. You never know. But either way, if you get CJ Stroud, they also hold the number 12 overall pick, which I have penciled into this point for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think if you're able to pair up CJ Stroud and Jaxon Smith-Njigba coming right out of college as one of the most elite wide receiver quarterback duos in the entire NFL right out the gate, I am ecstatic with that. Even if they don't end up going with the wide receiver in round 1, round 2 is still a great opportunity for them to go out and get a good wide receiver, considering just how bad the need is for this team. I mean, Robert Woods, not somebody you should be excited about. Nico Collins, well, he did play decent. I mean, the depth chart, again, was desolate. 500 yards in 10 games, finishing as the wide receiver 77. Not great. I think the number 1 target in this offense will most likely be John Mechie this next season, if they don't end up bringing in a wide receiver. But if they do, this depth chart is so wide open for the taking. And I just think the pairing of Jaxon Smith-Njigba and CJ Stroud might be clouding my vision with this one, but oh my God, I would love to see that at the NFL level. Next up, I do have the Seattle Seahawks, and I think the Seattle Seahawks are a sneaky good landing spot for a wide receiver. I mean, for one, this is a team that always has consistently funneled its production through 2 wide receivers, namely DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But Tyler Lockett, at this current moment, is getting to be a pretty old wide receiver. I mean, at the start of the NFL season, he is going to be 31 years old, and well, he probably does have a year or 2 worth of NFL production left. In the long term, it's going to be DK and whoever they end up drafting. They do have the 5th pick and the 20th pick, which are both very good selections if they do elect to go out and draft a wide receiver. Well, I think 5th pick might be a little rich for this wide receiver class. They probably will end up going somebody on defense, whether it be Jalen Carter, Will Anderson if he falls, or the like. I think 20 is a perfectly fine spot to go out and get your wide receiver for potentially the next 10 years. I think Jordan Addison really fits the mold of what the Seahawks would be looking for in a wide receiver, especially considering they do have the big body freak athlete in DK Metcalf already. They are ahead of a lot of wide receiver needy teams, so another team might go and elect to trade up ahead of them. But even if they do end up with Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, I'm absolutely fine with that. I think it is a great landing spot long term. Short term, again, maybe not the best, but we are talking Dynasty here, and I think it makes a ton of sense for the Seahawks to go out and get a wide receiver, get ahead of the game, get a great wide receiver early. You never know when you're going to have 2 first-round picks in the NFL draft again, although the Seahawks will have 2 NFL first-round picks next year. Anyways, I digress. I think a great idea for the Seahawks to go out and get a wide receiver. Moving on, though, I am going to go a tier up here, and maybe this is G-Men bias. Maybe this is Giants bias. But I do have the Giants as the number 4 landing spot for a wide receiver. Yes, we do bring in Darren Waller. But at the same time, the rest of the depth chart is among the most disgusting in the entire NFL, starting guys like Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins. Well, I do like these players. They are not quality starters on any NFL offense. I mean, the coaching staff proved that they wanted to go out and get as many wide receivers as they could this upcoming season. We even signed Jamison Crowder to a deal. I don't think we're done yet necessarily. We do have Wan'Dale Robinson potentially coming off of an injury and coming back to the NFL, but we just don't know at this point. I mean, he is so small as a receiver. I see it as entirely possible we go out and try and get somebody like Zay Flowers late in the first round, which I think is a great landing spot for him. He would immediately take over and be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, which is exactly what you like to see. We also have Daniel Jones, who, well, yes, did not throw that many touchdowns this last season. It was the first year in a new system. I think he will take a step forward and only get better from here. Our O-line should be taking a step up. Evan Neal should be getting better. Fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know, but either way, I think the Giants should be getting better this next season. Maybe not in the win category because we did kind of win some fluky games here and there. Overall, I think this offense will produce more points, and I think that is ultimately what matters for these wide receivers going forward and what I would like to see for the future of the Giants. Next up, I have the Bills, and I mean, the Bills are pretty much a no-brainer here at number 3. I think the Bills are a great team to go out and get a good wide receiver. I mean, we're talking about Stephon Diggs going into his year 30 season. Well, he probably does have a year or 2 of productivity left. Other than that, the depth chart, not really all that great. I mean, you have Gabe Davis, who did show some promise in his first 3 seasons, but he's never really going to be that elite wide receiver, in my humble opinion. I think he will be more of that burner speed type of guy to keep the defenses honest, rather than a true number 2 wide receiver in this offense. I think the number 2 role will go to whoever they end up taking in the NFL draft, if they do end up taking a wide receiver. Not only that, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL in Josh Allen, throwing you the ball week in and week out, which I'm absolutely fine with. Although they do pick a little bit later in the first round, they probably will be missing out on the top 4 wide receivers, barring a trade up. I think they could still end up going with some good wide receivers later on in the draft, and there are a lot of great slot wide receiver type options that could fit their team pretty well in the long term to fill that Isaiah McKenzie, Khalil Shakir type of role in this offense long term, which is ultimately what I would like to see from the Bills. Moving on to my number 2 spot, though. I think this is, again, a no-brainer, although on the surface it might seem a little hazy. We do have the Chargers at number 2. I think the Chargers are a great landing spot, but on the surface it does seem a little bit murky because you do have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Both of these guys are great wide receivers at the NFL level, but we're talking about Keenan Allen going into his age 31 season at the NFL level. And after this next year, the Chargers can go out and cut him and save $23 million in total cap space, which is insane. Not only that, they can go out and cut Mike Williams after this next year, a 30-year-old wide receiver, and save another $20 million. Well, I'm not necessarily sure they would decide to cut both of them. I think at least one of them is more than probable, considering they do need to bolster other positions for the long term, especially their defense. Meaning we could actually see the Chargers go out in the first round and draft a Jordan Addison type prospect in year 1, which I think would be great for the Chargers. While Joshua Palmer has shown promise, I don't realistically think that he is ever going to be that wide receiver 1 in this offense. I think if they do bring in a Jordan Addison, I think if they do bring in a Njigba, I think even Quentin Johnston fits this offense supremely well. Either way, if they do elect to bring somebody in the first round, this is a phenomenal landing spot, especially considering the Chargers have a quarterback who can go out and throw for 40 touchdowns on any given season. This is a great landing spot. You can't go wrong with it. Moving on to my last landing spot, and this is the number 1 landing spot in a tier of its own. Should be pretty obvious. It's a no-brainer. It's the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs' depth chart is absolutely desolate. We're talking about a depth chart with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We're talking about a depth chart with Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. None of these guys are even really all that good. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling did nothing last season. Sky Moore, a second-round rookie pick, had 200 yards this last season. And Kadarius Toney, did show promise with the Giants and did look good in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs. I don't know if he's going to be playing much this season. I mean, he has been one of the most injury-prone wide receivers since he's came into the league. Not only that, they did only trade a 3rd-round pick for him, which is not really that much compensation. Does not show that much faith in Kadarius Toney, although he's the only one I think that has legitimate promise to be a potential 1 in this offense. Other than that, you have nobody. The Chiefs do pick 31st overall, so yes, they are probably going to be missing out on those top-tier wide receivers. Again, the Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnstons, etc. I do think there is potential that they do go and try and land a Jalen Hyatt, go try and land a Marvin Mims potentially, because I do really like Marvin Mims. We'll see what ends up happening, but if a guy like Zay Flowers somehow falls, I would say Zay Flowers would probably be my wide receiver 3, potentially even the wide receiver 2 in Dynasty rookie drafts this upcoming season. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll have to see everyone's landing spots before I can make a claim to that bold. But at the same time, I think it is entirely possible. Let me know what you think about this down below, though, this list, because I know there is some crazy takes. Maybe the Giants are a bit too high. Maybe the Texans are a bit too high. But either way, guys, that's going to be it from me. Hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, go give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. And subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. It is the best way to help me out. It's totally free, and you can always change your mind later. With that, though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.